The recent BRICS summit in Johannesburg between the emerging global powers of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa represented a watershed moment for the so-called rules-based Western order. As leaders of the said nations addressed issues like climate change, economic instability, and health crises, it represented a final opportunity for emerging nations to establish a multipolar era and influence the developing world's fate.
The BRICS summit has kicked off in Johannesburg.
In South Africa, ahead of a summit of major economies.
Johannesburg, the event brings together leaders of emerging economies, including Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
And let's not forget that BRICS will soon become BRICS Plus, as it welcomes Argentina, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and more as new members. The aftershocks of this summit have continued to ripple around the globe. While some critics dismiss the BRICS commitments, events on the ground make it clear that a new era of geopolitics is unfolding. In this video, we'll break down the key outcomes of the summit, analyze if BRICS will lead to the end of the UNSC and petrodollar, and discuss what it all means for global affairs going forward. But before we start, be sure to tickle that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to ring the notification bell. It's quite lonely without your attention. And we also look forward to your thoughts in the comments. Creators live for feedback, and the algorithm simply adores interaction. Alright, now back to the video. Chapter 1. The Emergence of a Multipolar World. BRICS countries are home to over 3.2 billion people, which is over 41% of the world's population. Together, they account for approximately 26% of global GDP. Rather than simply following the agenda set by Western nations, BRICS countries have increasingly looked to advance their interests on the international stage. This marks a change from the past when these emerging economies often played secondary roles. Through cooperation amongst each other, BRICS nations now challenge the traditional Western-led alliances and institutions that have dominated for decades. The growing economic strength of BRICS is notable. Together, their combined GDP exceeds $27 trillion, and 4 of the 5 BRICS states ranks among the top 10 largest economies. China alone contributes over 15% of global GDP. Foreign direct investment between BRICS countries has also surged, with China becoming the largest trade partner for Brazil, India, and South Africa. At this year's BRICS summit in Johannesburg, the leaders discussed collaborating in new areas like digital economy, green energy, and even launching a joint satellite for communications. They also agreed to establish a BRICS rating agency as an alternative to the Western-dominated ratings model. While tensions with the West persist over issues like sanctions and spheres of influence, BRICS countries seem committed to deepening economic ties. With their power and global roles expanding, BRICS nations present an alternative model to multilateral cooperation that could shape the future international order. Only time will tell how the relationship between BRICS and the established Western powers evolves, but it's clear that this bloc has emerged as an important voice on the global stage. Chapter 2. Delegitimizing the UN Security Council. Calls for reform of the United Nations Security Council, or UNSC, have persisted for decades, and the BRICS summit provided another platform to advocate for change. The UNSC permanent membership currently includes the 5 victorious powers from World War II, but fails to represent the geopolitical shifts of the past 70-plus years. BRICS countries argue that the UNSC composition does not accurately reflect present global economic and political dynamics. For example, India today has the world's 5th largest economy and 4th largest defense budget and is set to soon surpass Japan as the 3rd largest economy. Brazil's GDP of $1.8 trillion makes it one of the 10 largest in the world. Their rising economic strength and global roles have intensified demands from these nations for permanent seats on the UNSC and more say in international decision-making. However, reform efforts have faced resistance from current permanent members reluctant to give up their privileges. This growing disparity between the UNSC's composition and 21st century geopolitical realities has eroded its legitimacy and effectiveness in addressing issues on the contemporary global agenda. From climate change and pandemics to trade and cybersecurity, the UNSC now struggles to bring together the cooperation needed due to the lack of representation of emerging powers. At the BRICS summit in South Africa, leaders signed a joint declaration calling the UNSC unrepresentative and pledged to work together to push the reform process forward. Their combined economic weight and large international voting blocs give this alliance significant influence to advocate for a more balanced global governance system. Chapter 3. Isolating the G7. Beyond just coordinating amongst themselves, one of the most impactful aspects of the BRICS grouping has been its outreach through the BRICS Plus initiative. This seeks to broaden engagement and cooperation among non-BRICS emerging economies. BRICS Plus, which now includes Iran, Saudi Arabia, Argentina, Ethiopia, and more, directly challenges the influence wielded by the G7, a forum of wealthy Western nations that has historically dominated agenda setting on issues of global trade, finance, and security. However, the G7 represents less than a third of the world's population and half of global GDP. In contrast, BRICS Plus embraces a more inclusive approach aimed at developing countries. This offers an alternative platform for cooperation that transcends the narrow interests of the traditional G7 powers. By socializing global norms beyond the confines of Western-led institutions, BRICS Plus amplifies the voice of emerging economies. It allows these nations increased say on issues like climate action, pandemic response, debt relief, and international taxation, shaping 21st century multilateralism to reflect the realities of a multipolar world. Over time, BRICS Plus could challenge the dominance of Western-centric global governance frameworks that are increasingly seen as outdated and illegitimate. Chapter 4. Progress on oil trade and de-dollarization. Economic matters were also a prominent focus at this year's BRICS gathering. One of the notable proposals discussed was increasing the settlement of trades between member countries using their local currencies instead of the US dollar. Currently, over 60% of global foreign exchange reserves and around 40% of international trade invoices are denominated in US dollars. This gives Washington extensive influence over the global economic system. BRICS countries, with a combined GDP of over $27 trillion, want to reduce this dollar dependence. A significant move discussed was trading oil in currencies other than dollars, such as conducting energy commerce between Russia, China, and India using their currencies instead. As oil remains a strategic commodity, this would bypass dollar transactions and diminish America's leverage from being a key oil importer. Other proposals explored were issuing BRICS-denominated bonds, setting up a payments network as an alternative to SWIFT, and establishing a BRICS rating agency. Such moves aim to establish greater financial autonomy and a more balanced international monetary system. Chapter 5. Challenging Western-led institutions. The BRICS Summit loudly and proudly displayed fervent backing for revolutionary organizations like the BRICS Bank and defiant credit rating agencies. These daring agencies brazenly defied the conventional Western-led financial institutions, such as the tyrannical International Monetary Fund and the oppressive World Bank, as well as the prejudiced Western credit rating agencies. With ferocity, these rising institutions will undoubtedly obliterate the business models and authority of their arrogant Western counterparts. The traditional powers of old will be swept aside by the fires of change ignited in Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. A new global financial order is emerging before our very eyes through the unyielding efforts of the BRICS nations. Their triumphant vision of an independent economic future free from Western domination will shake the foundations of world finance to its corrupt core. The summit makes clear that the BRICS countries have the courage and resolve to challenge the outdated imperialist stranglehold and forge their path toward prosperity. Chapter 6. Conclusion. What's next for BRICS Plus? To sum up, the BRICS Summit emphasized that the world is moving towards a multipolar order, doing so by embracing diverse approaches rather than grudgingly submitting to a singular Western-dictated approach that disregards cultural nuance. As emerging economies grow ever more confident and united in a cooperative spirit, alternatives to the dominant global paradigm will persistently and defiantly develop to increasingly reflect the constantly shifting contours of international realities in ways the established order refuses to acknowledge. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the recent BRICS Summit and its implications for the global power structure. Please click like, spread the word, And stay tuned for further thought-provoking investigations by tapping subscribe. Until then, keep those minds engaged and questioning.